Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmer's Tropic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, October 25th. Another day of weakness. We had a couple really small bounce days, Monday, Tuesday. It really felt like that it was pulling teeth in terms of trying to get this market to kind of bounce a little bit. Shaky, a couple days. I classified yesterday as kind of a whippy day. It ended the right way, but it just seems, one of the things that I've been talking about the last couple days is that any type of bad news or still headlines, the market is still coming down pretty hard on that. One of the things that I like to look for is when we have bad news, specifically like after a move down, right? Whether it's a dip or a correction, and you have bad news and the market actually goes up on that, right? Then you know that a lot is already priced into the market. Right now, we're not through that phase, right? Bad news is bad news, good news is bad news, and the market goes down, all right? So that's one of those kind of indicators that's not really, you can't really measure that. It's just something that you kind of observe, is that the market stops going down on bad news, and we're definitely, like, we have not seen that, right? Anything that's slightly bad news, the market is falling apart on that. And I think for earnings reports, it's kind of the same thing. There are some names that are going up on earnings. We'll talk about Microsoft too, that weathered the storm today. But there's many more names that if they just miss a little bit something, they're getting pummeled on earnings, right? And that just tells me that there is still too much good sentiment in this market right now. And I think it also speaks to just, anytime that this market goes up a little bit, right, the bulls just come right back in, and they get excited about this market, right? There's still, I think, another thing that, again, is more qualitative than quantitative, is that sometimes, like, I remember going back in my trading days back in 2008, 2009, when the SPX made that famous low at 666, right? Once the market started to go up, nobody wanted to buy that, right? People were more concerned about their jobs, right? They didn't know, in my position, I saw people that were getting laid off left and right, and so you didn't care so much, even though the market was and I wasn't trading my personal account then. I was an institutional trader. But as the market was recovering, you had gone through so much pain that you didn't believe that the lows were in back then. That's what I remember. And right now, it seems, now again, that was a pretty extreme situation that we had with the credit crisis and the financial crisis. And you didn't know if you were going to have a seat. You didn't know if your company was going to be in business. But it's a much different environment right now. The unemployment rate is still very low. But I'm just speaking in terms of different, from one area of the spectrum to the other. And right now, as soon as, like, we get an update, like, everybody's starting to retweet charts and that type of thing. So it kind of just backs up the price action that we're seeing right now. So first thing first, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So yes, more weakness. Qs were down. Qs got hammered, down 2.5%. Look at the semiconductors too. So two really trouble spots in the market right now are the semiconductors, which were down, almost 4% for the day. Also communications, which is a lot of Meta and Google, was down 4%. Remember, that was one of the best looking sector ETFs just a couple weeks ago. So it just shows you too that this market doesn't want anything to really break out, right? If we can start with there, and then we can go into Meta's earnings. But this is just symbolic of everything that's going on right now. It's so hard for anything to break out, right? You had one day where price got above its value area, and then boom, and I see this all over the place. FICO was one name that I saw, just wasn't a name that I was looking to trade, but it was the only name that made a 4-week high a couple days ago, right? This is where it was at 940. Look at the stock now. It's down $100 from there. So if you go through, regardless of, like, what people are thinking, because I still see so many people thinking that, oh my God, seasonality is going to rescue this market, right? I think that you want to be looking for things other than somebody telling you that this is a strong time of the year, right? You want to start seeing the market, just as I mentioned, go up on bad news. You want to see some names not do this. Every time a name touches a breakout area, it does this, right? And it completely falls apart. I mean, that's a very difficult market to trade. I'm, in this market and trading it, and I'm having a very difficult time like this because something that looks like a pretty good setup consolidate again. I didn't trade this one, thank goodness, but it just annihilated, and that's a lot of names. VRT is another example too, right? I have this name in my long-term account. I don't have it in my trading account, but the name was up, I think, close to 10% pre-market, right? And it got squashed. So, bears are loving this market because they can fade anything, right? Anything goes up, it's worth fading right now in this market. So let's talk a little bit about why that is. But up to $43 and hit all the way down, close almost, on the lows of the day. This is again, all I'm saying is that this is not a healthy market, right? And I change basically, if you're a regular viewer of my videos, you know that I will, as soon as I see better price action and better, better things, I get much more positive and much more optimistic about the market. But when you see this over and over and over, this is not a healthy market. So what you want to do is either, like, if you're playing this kind of stuff, you can short these moves, right? And I know that's what some bears love to do, is that anything that goes up, they short. And it's almost like the opposite of like a raging bull market, right? In a raging bull market, dips get bought, right? No problem, right? Now everything gets faded. So you could play that game right now, and you could just do what's working right now, even though I'm not executing that as well as I should be, which is just basically riding day trades, because especially to the downside. To the downside, if you notice, the price action is just going down, and there's no there's very little bounces when names go, when you have a good down day. So that's something that you can capitalize. If not, the other alternative right now is just to basically either trade lightly or sit on your hands and keep your buying power there for you, so that when things do improve, because they eventually will, right? And that's something that if you've been in markets for a while, that it does change. Right now, I can't tell you when that's going to change. I can't tell you what the catalyst is, but we do have a lot of events coming up. On Friday, we get the PCE deflator. Tomorrow is an ECB meeting. So any one of these events, could change the tone in the market. Next week, we have the Fed meeting. Do I expect anything major for the Fed meeting next week? No. Unless Friday's report is going to show a major drop in inflation. All right, let me bring this up for you. And then, sorry, I'm talking bigger picture first, and I wanted to get into Meta, but there's just more bigger picture things I think to worry about than what Meta does on earnings personally, but with the condition that the market is in. But where is this? PCE deflator. They're looking for 0.3. Is this going to come in lighter than expected? I don't know. We just saw retail sales go up more than expected, and that's just, look at the new home sales today coming in higher than expected. So everybody seems to think that there's weakening that's coming in, they're seeing weakening in the consumer and weakening in the real estate market, but numbers continue to come out and beat expectations. So I don't have the answer for why that's occurring, why retail sales crushed estimates last week. And I have a tough, like, that would surprise me. If inflation goes down on Friday, the PCE deflator, I would be surprised. And again, I just go back to that we have monetary policy that is tightening, and you have fiscal policy that is continuing to expand, and they are continuing to do all types of spending like there's no tomorrow, and they don't care about inflation. They are just spending like they've never spent before in terms of fiscally. So that's why you have such a difficult situation on our hands, right? The monetary policy, the Fed is not on the same, is not nearly on the same page as what the Treasury is doing. So that is why, in my opinion, inflation is lingering, and you have such a difficult market right now. Let's talk. Let me talk about Meta just for a second, and then I will talk about some of the other things. But I mean, this is nice. It's back to where it was on the open. So yes, if you bought this right at the end of the day, you're up a bit, right? And sometimes that's how it works with some of these earnings reports, is you have to wait until the very end of the day, because you could have a down day like this and a name, so this is just going back to where we were yesterday. This is not a cause for celebration unless you bought right at the in the last 15 minutes of the session. And what did I do with this? But it's a mixed report. Right. And you could see some names are down after this because they're bringing in their spending is basically what they're saying. So revenue, EPS revenue beat. Let me bring up, but they're talking about cost structures, right? So there's good and bad. Yes, I mean, look at their guidance, by the way. Look at how wide this is. You could drive a truck through this guidance. If I can find it here. Looking for the current revenues in the region of 36.5 to 40 billion. So I mean, that's a $3.5 billion range, market that they're making, essentially, right? Bid 36.5, offer 47. The consensus was 38.7, and yeah, so they're talking about things like cost cutting, because if you look at, I was reading a post here. I mean, look at Nvidia, right? Is down after hours, right? Arista Networks look at Arista Networks is getting walloped here after hours. So a lot of that is because I believe that they're cutting their capex, right? So interesting. A couple other names that reported. I did see IBM ServiceNow. It looks like their numbers are pretty good, right? They're same thing. You look and you're like, wow, that's a big move from 528 up to 556. Now, again, if you play this, if you put the trade on, if you put on an earnings trade yesterday, you're not going to be so happy because the stock is exactly back to where it was yesterday. But if you waited till all the way at the end of the day yesterday, and bought some stock or bought, a call spread or something like that, pretty good. Right. But again, it's just getting back to where it was at Friday, at yesterday's close. So that's the situation. Other movers, I'll go through really quickly here. EDR is mentioning strategic review. They're up. PI, which their numbers were not great, but maybe there was just a lot of negative sentiment in this one. They're up 19% on this, right? That's a really now that's a healthy move, up to $90, right? So all the way back up here, it looks like, this name has really gotten punished since they came out with a couple bad earnings reports. There was one other name that I was going to mention too, but I forget what it was. Clack, right, is another, just going through semis because they really got beaten up after Texas Instruments. I mean, look at Clack. They had a good earnings report. They're up $5, right? They're not even back to the open. So to me, just disappointing when you see names that are up after hours, but they're not above where they started the day. It makes me think that, man, this is such a tough market. And look at the Qs, right? No bounce whatsoever here in the after hours market. So where does that leave us? Well, let's start with the week. We've got 2 more days left in the week. Yes, we're starting to break this pattern that I've got drawn here, and I've had drawn here for a couple weeks. We are breaking this to the downside, and 332 could be an area that we could find support at. let's see if I can give you something else here. By the way, there was a VPOC that was taken out here. Again, this is short-term stuff. So let's see if we can hold on to 350, right? That, virgin point of controls, sometimes you could see reversals off them. Again, it's always a battle of the buyers and the sellers. So there should be some demand here. We'll just have to see. That's going to have to outweigh what the what the sellers are doing. But if not, it could be the 200-day moving average, right? Regardless of the seasonality. So again, it's good to know about the seasonality and have that in the back of your mind. But that is only one little piece of the puzzle, right? You've got to rely on the price action, what's going on in the internals, which have been one of the worst, by the way. So maybe because I'm talking so negatively, maybe the market will go up, but the internals are ridiculously bad. I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen as bad as internals as these. One of the things that I run is what's at the end of the day is called an out of the box scan. It's when names are breaking out on multiple areas. I've run this a couple times this week. I've never saw it come up with no results before. So today there was one stock on it, so it just goes to show you how bad this breath is right now. And if you look at this, which I don't bring up in every one of these videos, but take a look at the S&P. Right, you had 50, which actually surprised me. There were so many. 15 names made new 4-week highs. Right, I think the other day it was just one, and you have 190 names making new 4-week lows. What you want to see is some type of a divergence, right? You want to see as the market's going down, maybe where the new 4-week lows are not increasing. Right now, I don't think that that's the case that you have on your hands. There's a chart of this, which is hard to kind of read, but maybe a little bit less here, in terms of new lows, right? And then if we look at new 52-week lows, right, you got nothing for new 52-week highs, right? And there's 64 names that made 52-week lows. So and again, like maybe as we come to the lows here, the fact that we're not seeing new lows really increase, maybe that's somewhat of a small divergence, but I'm grasping at straws at this point for trying to look for something positive, right? So there's the Qs, the S&P, which I've mentioned, so now we've taken out the October lows. And we're also pushing into the value area for the year, right? So I've said in the beginning of this week, because of where we closed last week, that 42.57.75 was kind of the line in the sand, because we want to see the uptrend hold. And it's the first time basically since, going back to May. I think this is May when we took this out, that we are now breaking, we're now breaking back into the value area. So there's a lot of negatives out there right now. So, again, we're going to need some type of catalyst to turn us higher, because I can't believe it's been this long in the video and I haven't talked about bonds, but, another disgusting move in terms of bonds and interest rates, heavy to the downside. Here's your ZB, which we one positive I would say is we haven't taken out the lows, but you could see, that this is why you have to be really careful with playing, whether it's bonds or commodities or stocks in downtrends, is because anything can bounce in a downtrend, but they usually go back to their trend. So what I would watch for is to see if the lows can hold at this point, right? That might be somewhat constructive, but this was a heavy down day, right? TLT was down 2.2%. Today. So another big move. So that's what we have so far. Again, I sound negative because that's exactly what the market is telling me, right? If I saw something else that I could extract that's positive, I would be all over that. But, so that's what we have on our hands right now. Other things that I wanted to mention, so I want to go, the Dow Jones is starting to outperform a little bit, right? Even though so it was only down 1/3%, right? So reminder that this got rejected in here, right? Trying to get back into value. So, this might be an area that outperforms for a little bit. I was showing this chart earlier. see if I could bring it up really quick, and then we'll kind of end on this. But looking at the diamonds versus the Qs, right? Perhaps the diamonds might start outperforming the Qs a little bit. We'll see. Watch this range here. And this is in this ratio 0.95. That's what I would be watching. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.